What's up, guys? Now, UFC 244 just wrapped up, and the card was really good. Some performances a lot of people didn't like, but there were performances that just blew the roof off the place, right? And we're going to start with that main event. So Jorge Masvidal defeats Nate Diaz in between rounds 3 and 4 due to a cut. Now, before the championship rounds commenced, the doctors seemed to deem Nate Diaz unfit to continue the fight, and the ref stopped the fight because of that. Those cuts that Nate Diaz had on his eye, they did look pretty bad. Now, usually doctors advise the ref to stop the fight because the cuts are in a bad spot where the blood keeps leaking into the eye and you can't really fight throughout the entire duration of a contest with blood in your eye the entire time, especially a high stakes fight against such a dangerous fighter, Jorge Masvidal. It's probably not the smartest thing to do. Now, the blood was leaking in the eye, but not as much as usual for Nate, right? It wasn't directly above the eye, it was kind of to the side, and the blood seemed to leak down the side of his face, and he had another cut under his eye. So what it tells me is the cuts are probably really bad. So we don't really know. The doctor probably knows better than all of us. Two dogs going at it. And that's what this was, man. These two guys took the best shots of each other, were going for the kill every step of the way. Whenever an opening presented itself, they really went for it, especially Masvidal. And it's funny because Masvidal is always known as like the decision machine. He always lost by split decisions, always went to a decision, always tried to be super technical and drag out the fight as much as he can. Never really known for that killer instinct, but now the guy's like a straight up assassin in there. Everything he tries to do is to end his opponent. Masvidal fought like he was a pit bull. Every time he saw blood, every time he saw an opening, he was going for it. Right there and then. He would explode, and I am impressed of how fast he explodes from the outside to get to the inside. He does say that he runs a lot, he does a lot of sprints, and I think that's really working on his entries. I mean, he's exploding on Nate Diaz, and Diaz is not able to react to it. Look at all those right overhands that landed so quickly. And they were landing at will on the opposite stance. Nate Diaz, Jorge's taking the outside foot advantage, throwing that right overhand over the top, and not really much of a mask to it, but still catching Diaz, who is longer than Jorge as well. Very impressive. And he threw in that double switch left hook that he threw at Darren Till, and when he committed with it, I was literally shocked when I saw it coming, because it was just so quick, and Jorge looked ripped more than ever before, and he's at a higher weight class than he used to compete in before. He's a lot more ripped, muscular than he ever was before. And I think the strength and conditioning, the running, all that stuff, the sprints, are helping his ability to explode, getting him faster, getting him stronger in the clinch, and you saw that in this fight as well. People say Nate Diaz is such a big fighter. Jorge was pretty much a stronger guy in the clinch as well. Grabbing the underhooks, body locks, controlling Diaz. Even when it came to the wrestling, he was way ahead of Diaz. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of people don't understand how good Jorge is, even if Damian Maia says it. Even when other fighters and other analysts acknowledge how great on the ground Jorge Masvidal is, a lot of people just seem to not understand it. Even when they hit the mat, Jorge was controlling Nate Diaz. He defended the submissions. He was able to roll with them, scramble with them, follow his way through, keep the hooks in when Diaz tried to sweep on top that he gets on everybody. Jorge is one of the first guys to follow through, keep the hook in, and keep that position. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the fight was really on Jorge Masvidal's side. He was way ahead. He dropped Diaz in the first 2 rounds. One was the elbows in the clinch, and that's the one place I thought Diaz would have an advantage over Jorge, but I guess he doesn't. Jorge really practicing the clinch work, which you don't normally see from Jorge. The only other time you ever seen Masvidal hurt someone in the clinch like that was when he fought Cesar Ferreira, who was a middleweight, right? He knocked him out from the clinch with the elbows, and he brought it back in this fight after years without using it. He landed those 2 elbows, which I think cut Diaz, and followed his way through with a blitz, and Diaz likes to lean a lot, and he did the same thing when he fought Josh Thompson. Josh Thompson hit him with a head kick, and Diaz afterward kept leaning to his left, and got caught by those uppercuts from Thompson and finished. In this one, he leaned to his left and fell right into a high kick. I cannot understand how Diaz eats these shots. He gets flush head kicked while leaning into it, and still able to continue. He got bombed by a right overhand on the jaw, and still recovers. Instantly, like once he hits the ground, he's all conscious again. Very similar to like a Tony Ferguson, right? He gets knocked down by the biggest shots, and he's looking at your eyes and talking trash to you, right? When he got dropped by the body shot, he's talking trash to Masvidal, telling him to go on the ground with him. That can demoralize some people, but not a guy like Masvidal, not a guy who's been in the game, in the trenches. The trash talk and all that stuff is not going to get to someone like Masvidal, not at all. If anything, it's just going to make it more fun for him. And you saw that in the fight. He was constantly laughing. Even when he got hit by the left hook, right hook combination, the biggest shots from Nate Diaz, I think it was in that first round at the end of it, Jorge tied up with them, double underhooks, and started laughing. Like, he loves this. And Masvidal with those body kicks, the body shots, he didn't really go to many leg kicks besides a side kick to the knee, which really works on the forward pressure of Diaz. That's what just didn't allow him to cross that distance, to engage in clinches and stuff like that. The outside range is where Masvidal really took over. He was able to comfortably and confidently explode, get into the inside and land his punches, or just throw kicks from the outside. He just needed to be on the outside or right in front of Diaz and he was in complete control. And now Masvidal is the BMF champion, and a lot of people I know are going to want to fight him. Even if they're not going to get the belt, he has like this status to him. He's the guy. He's the biggest dog in the game. And even stylistically, not just his BMF thing, but he can absolutely go and fight the winner of Colby and Usman. He 100% deserves it. He's the next guy in line if he wants to fight for that. But he says he wants to fight Nate Diaz again because he didn't knock him out. That is commitment. I mean, he just outclassed Diaz for the most part of the fight. Got caught here and there and got in some tricky positions. But he was in control for the most part, and he was landing whenever he wanted to land. Right? Even when Diaz was trying to enter with that body jab, Jorge was countering him with a jab to the face, which stops Diaz completely. It just seemed he knew Nate Diaz's game down to a T. And it was pretty cool. Nate Diaz came out with his brother, and Masvidal came out with Roberto Duran. It was really epic, man. The Rock came out, all that stuff. I don't know how I feel about The Rock coming out like that. I thought he was just going to be there. It felt a little bit too WWE for me, but it was all fun. And who I think they should be fighting next? I'm down if they do a rematch, but I don't think it's like a deserving rematch. You know what I'm saying? It was pretty one-sided, and I really like to see Jorge Masvidal fight the winner of Colby and Usman, right? Because he deserves it. If he goes and loses to Diaz, now he just lost so much. I didn't think anything Nate was going to do was going to be too effective against Masvidal as the fight was progressing, but you never know. There was 2 rounds. But again, I want to see Jorge fight the champion. As for Nate Diaz, he can fight Conor McGregor again. I love to see that one trilogy. If not him, I mean, it's really up to Nate Diaz. Like, there's no one that's going to tell him who he's going to fight, who he's not going to fight. He's going to determine that himself. And then we go to the co-main event. Darren Till defeats Kelvin Gastelum by split decision. And before I get into it, I want to talk about decisions tonight. And decisions with New York. For some reason, New York has some of the worst decisions when it comes to MMA. How many of these fights were split decisions and at least one judge got it so off? It's insane to see them disagree so much. It's like they don't know what they're watching. And here's the thing. These are boxing judges. I saw a theme tonight that whoever was moving forward and throwing hands was the one that was winning on the scorecards. I don't know how that's... You can't have these people judge. They don't know what they're seeing. They just see hands flying and some guy just being aggressive, and they don't know if it's landing. They don't know how bad it's landing. They don't know if the punches are getting evaded. They don't know what's going on under that fire. They just see wildness, and whoever is going forward with it, that's the guy that's winning it. That's not how it works. And just like this one, I had Darren Till winning the fight. I thought he won 2 rounds out of the 3. But one judge gave it 30-27 for Kelvin Gastelum. I don't know how Kelvin won all rounds. I know he was the aggressor. I know he was throwing hands. I know he was the guy that could deliver the power, so maybe the judges were focused on him. But, okay, so for the fight, Darren Till is very disciplined. And it caused Kelvin Gastelum to become disciplined in that 3rd round, to go for the takedowns, which is something he doesn't do. He doesn't go for takedowns in the middleweight division. He's only done that against Uriah Hall. He doesn't wrestle at all. Like, that's just not his thing in here. He's a technical brawler. Right, he likes to land that left hand, he likes to exchange shots, he likes to make his way in and land gloves on your chin. But he had a hard time doing that against Darren Till because Darren Till wasn't doing anything too risky. And it's good to see if a young fighter actually fight intelligent out there, where I know a lot of people want to see them exchange left hands on each other and knock each other down. But as a coach, or if you're in Darren Till's corner, that's a good performance. Because coming off a brutal knockout, coming off a loss to Tyron Woodley before that, you don't necessarily want to risk everything trying to knock out Kelvin Gastelum, which is a very hard thing to do, right? No one's knocked out Kelvin Gastelum. And to think that you're going to be the first one coming off a loss and having so much on the stakes here, it would be pretty idiotic to do so, to try that. So Darren Till fought the cat and mouse game, pretty much. Using his movement, he looked very fast, very healthy at middleweight. I'm glad he moved up. He got loose at the end of the 1st round after feeling it out. Not too much action, like I said before, but he was looking for the counter left hand moving backwards, and to disengage or relieve the pressure, the aggression of Kelvin Gastelum, he would duck into his chest and get a body lock on him. And that would completely throw off so much of what Kelvin could do, because if he gets in too close, he's getting clinched up. And that left hand has to turn into an uppercut or something, because Kelvin doesn't move laterally. Doesn't have a good ability to move left and right, so he's moving forward and backwards. And when he moves forward, he's getting clinched up. When he's moving back, he's getting his leg kicked. So this instantly turned into a very frustrating fight for Kelvin Gastelum. And eventually, after missing all the left hands, after missing all of his punches, he resorted to wrestling in that 3rd round, and it was actually working. I was kind of surprised, and I think Darren Till may be a little bit surprised that Kelvin actually went for it late in the fight rather than early. And we know Darren Till has very good takedown defense. He scrambled up to his feet every single time, and just overall, a very disciplined performance. So who I think they should be fighting next? Here's the problem. Darren Till's now a top 5 fighter. Most likely. Whoever he fights, he's going to be at a huge disadvantage. I don't favor him against any of these guys, really. I think Jared Cannonier is the most favorable fight for him, but that's even such a tough fight for him. I don't know what's going on, because Robert Whittaker said that he has a fight that's getting lined up, and I don't know who that would be against, because Jared Cannonier was a backup fighter for this fight, and he went to make weight and all that stuff. So I don't really know who it is. I'd like to see Darren Till fight Jared Cannonier. or him fight Robert Whittaker. Those are the fights that make the most sense, I think. And it's good stylistically for Darren Till. 2 strikers, big power, fast, and that is a fight I think Darren Till would really like, and the brass would really be safe to book up, rather than a guy like Yoel Romero or something, that would be devastating. And as for Kelvin Gastelum, he was number 4, so I think he's going to drop to number 6. And Darren Till might take number 5, and Jared Cannonier might move up to number 4. Kelvin versus Jack Hermanson's a good fight. I think it's a fight that makes the most sense because Hermanson's the next ranked guy, and it kind of falls off after that with, Derek Brunson. Jacare moved up. I mean, you can have Kelvin versus Brunson. It'll be a fun fight. But regarding contendership, I think Jack Hermanson would be the best one. And then we move to Stephen Thompson defeating Vicente Luque by decision. This was dominant. Thompson was in the pocket a little bit more than I liked. And he was getting caught by Luque. That was the only time he was ever getting caught by Luque. And also when Luque was up against the cage. It has shown that Thompson is a lot more vulnerable when he's aggressive. Or at least when he's pressuring the opponent to the cage. It showed in this fight against Tyron Woodley. It showed in this fight as well. And it showed against Anthony Pettis. He just leaves himself so vulnerable when he's pressuring, but when he's moving backwards, the guy fights like a serpent, man. Hard to hit, always moving every kind of direction, moving every single angle, and throwing punches and kicks at all of those angles. And Vicente Luque took that very flat-footed Muay Thai style, and the leg kicks were working early on, and I think that was throwing off Thompson, but then Luque kind of abandoned it once he started getting caught in the face by those straight shots, right? The leg kicks were actually keeping Thompson still, and that's why you saw Thompson getting caught a little bit in that first round. But once he kind of abandoned it from getting hit in the face and tried to throw back at Thompson with his hands, that's when Thompson started to get the timing of Luque, and eventually getting the timing of Luque, that turned the fight completely to Thompson's side. Moving to the left, throwing a right hand, moving to the left, throwing a right hand, high kicks after combinations, the usual you see from Thompson. The side kicks that throwing Luque on his back is something I expected in this fight as well. With a lot of weight on the back foot for Luque, if you get side kicked, there's nothing really to balance on and you fall backwards. But here's the thing, man. Just like Nate Diaz tonight, how did Luque take these shots? I mean, we have seen Thompson knock people out. He knocked out Robert Whittaker. He knocked out Johnny Hendricks, who has an iron chin. He's dropped and hurt so many guys. Patrick Cote, who has a granite chin. Well, he didn't finish him, I think, but he dropped him constantly in the fight. Luque just ate everything and walked forward like some Brazilian tank. But it's a good performance from Stephen Thompson, a striking display. He beat the number 14. He is number 9. I'd like to see him fight Damian Maia. Damian Maia would be a good fight. He's number 6. It will be a grappler versus striker matchup. But if it's a fight everybody wants to see, I guarantee the most anticipated one would be him versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. But there's a problem with Ponzi. He's always infected with something. Staph, bacterial infection somewhere else. There's something with him. He needs to be quarantined. I'm just kidding. But if that fight could come to fruition, that's a fight I would really like to see. But I think a fight with Damian Maia would be the most favorable for a guy like Stephen Thompson. And as for Vicente Luque, he jumped up a bit to fight a top contender in Stephen Thompson. I'd like to see him fight Robbie Lawler or Mike Perry again, or if Perry is fighting Lawler, the winner of that fight, that would be a good one. Him fight Gilbert Burns would be a good fight. Very explosive fights. And then we move to Derek Lewis defeating Blagoy Ivanov by split decision. And again with this fight, I know a lot of people think that Derek Lewis won. This is the fight that I really disagreed with. Now, I can see a argument that Derek Lewis won, but when you really look under the fire, and if the shots were really landing for Derek Lewis, a lot of them weren't landing. People were just seeing Derek Lewis swing wildly at Blagoy Ivanov, and they just thought that Blagoy was getting caught by everything, but he wasn't. Actually, Ivanov stunned Derek Lewis here and there with some right hook counters. So the first round, Blagoy Ivanov got that takedown, grabbed the leg of Derek Lewis when he threw a kick, and almost got a key lock, and then dug in a guillotine, which kept Derek Lewis honest. And yes, Lewis flurried on him a couple times with some of those hammers. Most of them were just not landing. Ivanov was moving his head away from him. He was ducking under most of the punches. The only shots he was really getting hit by, some of those right hands were connecting through. That uppercut, I think, in the third round connected, and one of those knees. Everything else was not really anything crazy. And I just think those 3 times he almost submitted Derek Lewis, 2 key locks, and 1 front choke. I mean, those are pretty significant, and he got side control in the first round, not just sitting on top. He actually passed, got into side control, one of the most dominant positions you can have on the ground, and then went for Americana, but people seem to think that Derek Lewis won that round. It's just when Derek Lewis is throwing heat at you, it looks scary, right? And I guarantee that's what the judges thought was happening. He was moving forward, he was the one that was aggressive, he was the one that was pressuring, and he's the one that's attacking. So it's very easy to just see Lewis throwing hands and you think he's winning now. But good fight at the end of the day. It wasn't like one-sided or anything like that. It was pretty competitive. And who I think these guys should be fighting next? Derek Lewis is number 5. He beat the number 8. Lewis versus Alistair Overeem would be a good fight. The winner of Volkov versus Greg Hardy, especially if Greg Hardy wins, I know Lewis would want that fight because, frankly, if Hardy beats Volkov by some chance, he's going to be a top 10 fighter. And that puts him in the sights of Derek Lewis. And actually, if he is able to beat Volkov, I want to see it because if he could beat Volkov, you could probably fight Derek Lewis as well, you know? So I think the winner of that fight, even if Volkov wins, I mean, that fight they had before was pretty one-sided for Volkov until the end of it. And as for Blagoy Ivanov, a fight with Shamil would be a good one. Alexei Olenek would be a good fight. Or a fight with Alexei Olenek would be pretty good. And then we go to Kevin Lee putting out Gregor Gillespie by knockout 2 minutes and 47 seconds into the first round. The fight looked really good. I really liked how it was progressing. It looked like an old school 1950s boxing match. They were staying in front of each other, hands up high, circling, no big movement, no footwork, no elusiveness, just standing in front of each other and throwing jabs in each other's face. Gillespie got hit by something hard, Gillespie will return with something hard. And it was just going back and forth. Gillespie did look a little bit faster, but Kevin Lee was actually using that reach. Kevin Lee went to TriStar, and knowing how Zahabi trains his fighters over there, look at Rory McDonald, look at GSP, they have established a jab that is some of the best ever display in the UFC. You bet Kevin Lee's 77-inch reach was going to take effect. Kevin Lee's actually throwing jabs with good reach, good extension, snapping it in and out, and going back into his stance with his hands up. That is really good fundamentals from Kevin Lee. And not just that, he was able to work off of that and eventually time that right overhand, which caught Gillespie, it seemed like, on the temple and pushed him back. That reach of his, that 77-inch reach, extended all the way through, knocking Gillespie backwards, and then follow up with the high kick. I mean, that combination was beautiful to watch. Kevin Lee, not known for his knockout power, not known as a striker, put out Gregor Gillespie in the first round with a long right switch high kick to the face and put him out cold. A necessary finish for Kevin Lee, a necessary performance that is very important for his career. If he lost this, his career would not look the same. But I'm really liking the move to TriStar, especially with his striking. I wonder how his grappling is going to be. I wonder how his wrestling is going to be. Of course, he's not going to wrestle too much with Gregor Gillespie. He'll be playing his game, or at least making the fight a lot more competitive. Against the wrestler in Gillespie, Kevin Lee must have thought that he was a lot better on the feet. It didn't look like it until he knocked him out, right? It looked very competitive there as well. And I was really liking that fight. I feel bad for Gillespie, though. I mean, he got knocked out peacefully. He was just sitting against the cage, and it looked pretty bad. So who these guys should be fighting next? Kevin Lee is number 10. He knocked out the 11 Gillespie. And Kevin Lee does have a win over Edson Barboza, who was above him. He lost to Eli Quinta. I don't think they're going to run a third fight between them. Dan Hooker wants to look up. There is Paul Felder. I know Paul Felder will probably be up for it. That'd be a good fight for Kevin Lee. If Ante Pettis is open, I think Lee would like that fight as well. It'd be very favorable for Lee to win that. Charles Oliveira would be a hard fight. I don't think he would want something like that. I think he wants a guy like Paul Felder, who's number 6, or maybe even Donald Cerrone, if Cerrone's not fighting Conor McGregor. And those fights are going to be pretty hard for him, especially Donald Cerrone. Paul Felder would be a favorable fight for him. That makes the most sense to go for. Cerrone's a higher ranked with a bigger name, but a lot riskier to take because of the jiu-jitsu and because he has a better overall striking game. And I just don't know if Kevin Lee's cardio, which is still the biggest issue. We don't know where his cardio is at. If he can keep up with Cerrone, because if he can't keep up with Cerrone, he's eventually going to get knocked out or submitted. But as for Gregor Gillespie, he called out Ante Pettis. They could do that if Pettis wants to move down, that is. There is Alexander Hernandez. That would be an interesting fight. Gillespie coming off a big knockout loss. He probably is going to need some time off. I think Hernandez will be the most interesting one. And then we go to the shocker of the night. Corey Anderson TKOs Johnny Walker in the first round, 2 minutes and 7 seconds. He did it with his striking, but masking his wrestling. Now, if you guys haven't checked my breakdown, I break down the fight, went into detail on how this fight played out. Pretty much, man, Corey Anderson throwing jabs and got Johnny Walker moving all over the place because of it. And because he's moving all over the place and not advancing on Anderson and trying to see what Anderson's trying to do out there, besides just thinking that all he's going to do is wrestle, it left Anderson a bit more mysterious for Walker to fight. And Walker's reactions allowed Anderson to gauge a little bit more of the shots coming, when to throw his punches, when to time for takedowns, all that sort of stuff. Because Johnny Walker was just reacting too much, too hard against little things. His striking defense just doesn't seem to be there. Doesn't pick his hands up, even when the punches are coming in his face. Doesn't parry, doesn't block. It's all footwork and crazy head movement. And just like we saw Khabib versus Conor McGregor, the wrestler who has an overhand right, all they need to do is give you a show that they're going to take you down, go under at your hips. Corey Anderson did the same thing. And they both went through an overhand right, got their striker that they fought to drop their hands, got caught right in the chin. Both got stunned. The only thing is, Walker took a beating after. Got hit a couple more times, and Walker was just attacking back. He wasn't defending, he was just attacking back. He tried to get up a little bit, trying to grab the legs of Anderson on his way up when they were wrestling, but just nothing technical. Just trying to get up pretty much. And Anderson was just bombing him until a TKO, which a lot of people think that was pretty early. I don't think it was going to go well for Walker. I think he was eventually just going to take more damage because everything he was throwing back wasn't landing. Because he was throwing and wasn't landing. And it's up to Anderson if he puts himself out of position. That's the only way he's going to get caught. Walker was missing throwing haymakers, lunging punches, and just getting caught for it again. And if you didn't respect Corey Anderson, you better respect him now. I said that you have to outperform Dominic Reyes. I don't think this outperformed him when you just look at the knockout itself, but Anderson, a wrestler with the skills that he has, TKOing Johnny Walker is different than knocking out Chris Weidman on the feet. Walker is a terrifying striker, whereas Weidman's more of a grappler wrestler, especially moving up to light heavyweight. Walker's a big light heavyweight, man. So I don't know who's going to get title shots. Either going to be Anderson or it's going to be Dominic Reyes, but it seemed like Dana White said that Reyes is going to be up next for it. Anderson has to be after that because he has been disrespected by so many people. Well, not disrespected, but nobody's been noticing him in that sense. You know, not noticing him is kind of, in his way, disrespecting him. And he looked mad after that fight, flicking off the crowd, yelling in Walker's face, telling everybody, I think he told Dana White, yelled at him that he needs a title shot. You gotta respect him, man. He finished Johnny Walker on the feet. That is something nobody predicted. So who these guys should be fighting next? I don't know if Anderson 100% deserves a title shot over Dominic Reyes, but he's right there in the running. If they don't give him that, if Reyes gets a title shot first, I do like Corey Anderson versus Anthony Smith. And that's actually the only fight that makes sense because Santos is injured, DC is at heavyweight, Reyes gets a title shot. Jan Blachowicz is versing Jacare. He can get the winner of that fight, maybe. I don't really know where Corey Anderson is going to be at. And he's actually in a very tough position and a tough time slot because by the time Dominic Reyes fights John Jones, Jan Blachowicz is going to be done with Jacare, right? And then it's going to be, who is it? Jan or is it going to be Anderson? And as for Johnny Walker, you got to take a step back. Big step back. Maybe him versus Shogun Rua. Maybe him versus Nikita Krylov. Maybe him versus Ilir Latifi. These are the fights that make the most sense. And then we go to Shane Burgos TKOing Makwan Amirkhani in the third round, 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Burgos had trouble early on. He was getting hit by those right hooks as he was trying to take the outside foot on the southpaw Amirkhani, and he was getting taken down. Amirkhani showed his strength. Now Amirkhani started to get tired in the second round, and then really started gassing in the third round. And it was because of the body shots in the end of the second round. It was because he got dropped by that switch into southpaw, jab, left, straight, and the beating he took after that. When you get dropped and then beat up for an extended period of time, that zaps your cardio, man. And Amirkhani got up and it just didn't look the same. He was rocked, he was tired, a mix of the two, and Burgos just put it on him, man. Boxing of Burgos is something nobody can overlook in this entire division. Offensively, that is. Defensively, he needs some more work, especially because he was getting caught by those right hooks against Amirkhani. Amirkhani doesn't really throw a sneaky right hook or anything like that, and Burgos was just walking into them. And that's not something you really want to see, especially because he's making his way up in the rankings. But it was overall a good performance for Burgos. Yet Edmund Shabazian blowing right through Brad Tavares. I mean, fundamentals and precision, that was it. I mean, Edmund's, 21 years old or something like that? Really young against Brad Tavares and putting him out the way he did. Landed that straight right hand and then eventually switched into a head kick because Brad Tavares was scaling the cage. Just clear-cut, great performance for Edmund Shabazian. And are we going to take back what we said about Edmund Tarverdian, Ronda's coach? Are we going to take some stuff back? Because this kid looks really good. And I don't know if it's just because he's that special or if the coaching of Edmund works well with him. I don't know what it is, but Shabazian is actually throwing kicks. He wrestles more. He does a lot more than Ronda used to do. And maybe Edmund, the coach, learn a thing or two when it comes to coaching. It could be that, everybody can always progress. And then, I cannot pronounce his name, Rosenstruik knocks out Andrei Arlovski 29 seconds in the fight. I was pretty surprised seeing Arlovski rush in like the way he did, and he got countered by a left hook is pretty much what happened. Andrei Arlovski was pressured heavily, and he looked very uncomfortable because of it, and he tried to make his way through the center to relieve that pressure, and fell right into a left hook, which frankly I don't think Rosenstruik threw that hard. It looked pretty hard, but I've seen him hit a lot harder than that. I've seen him commit a lot harder than that, and that was all it took to put Arlovski out. So that is a much needed prospect for the heavyweight division. I mean, if this guy could be putting guys out like this, we need it. Because the heavyweight division is looking like it's going to retire pretty soon. Great card. I don't know anything happened with the president. I heard there was like a couple protests outside or something like that. Nothing too big. And that's really good to see. And what's the biggest thing to take away about this card? When you have a fight up, don't talk about John Jones. That's the number one lesson here. Seems to be a curse. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you in the next video.